46th time the governor of Louisiana, the current one, has come forward to do Ask the Governor, and he is at your service, and it is a show now in its 5th year, because Monday was quite a day all the way around for the governor of Louisiana and for the people of our state. And Governor, it started with your inauguration. I know you went to Mass to begin the day, and all your prayers were answered by the end of the day.
You know, Monday was right up there with, well, not quite as special as the birth of my children and the day that I married Donna, but it was right up there. It came in right behind them. And it was, even though the weather wasn't great, it actually did cooperate for the most part with the inauguration ceremony. The Mass Monday morning was beautiful. We were able to watch LSU win the national championship, which was extremely special, and obviously one of the most magical seasons ever, the best year ever for LSU football, but probably irrespective of which school or which year, I don't know of anything that tops what LSU was able to do this year. And so it just was a great day, and I know that the entire state was celebrating, and rightly so. We were having a good time. Well, we decided not to be passive. We wanted to be active participants in the game and do what we could to support our team, which meant doing a lot of yelling at the right times. We weren't yelling when we had the ball, but we had a great time. And I'll tell you, I was so fired up that despite the fact Monday had been a very long day, when I got home, I watched the game again. I went to bed about 4:30 yesterday morning. Because I wanted the benefit of the replays and the commentary, just to put it, more fully into perspective, and to make sure that I wasn't dreaming, I guess, when I was down there. It's an all-time record, and the fact that we got it here at LSU, and I've loved our teams. It doesn't really matter to me, in all honesty, whether we're running the ball every time or throwing the ball every time, as long as we're winning. But obviously, they were able to put it together this year with a strong passing game. And able to win, but that season he put together, with the benefit of his teammates, obviously the offensive line, the talented receivers that he had, it was awesome. And the Heisman Trophy, that's why I think this is the best season ever for any college football program. If you look at all the individual awards that were won by the team, the fact that they went 15-0, won the Heisman, and so forth. And played such a tough schedule. It wasn't like we were playing patsies week in and week out to get those 15 wins.
Well, the governor, of course, is the person who handles the funding for higher education, and before he arrived, higher ed had been cut for many years, and there are those who say that perhaps we put too much emphasis on football, but as one former chancellor at LSU said, it's the front porch of the university. I don't think it can hurt as far as raising money for LSU and perhaps for other universities by extension.
No, but look, first of all, I love football. I love college football, and the pageantry around college football means it's just totally different than professional. I'm a big Saints fan, but my heart doesn't break when the Saints lose the way it does when the LSU Tigers lose. And so there's so much involved in college football because that is your school. You've got the college band, you've got everything that goes into that, and then you have alumni out there. And so if you want to keep alumni fully engaged in what's going on campus and have them support the education portion of the mission, I do think that the sports part of it is important. And the fact that we were able to win the national championship, I suspect is going to have a lot of those folks in a much better mood, and now would be a good time to go to them and talk about other things going on at the university, not just the sports programs, but for example, this is no secret, we need a new library at LSU, and now we're talking about LSU specifically, but we need things across the state for the various institutions. But since we're talking about the Tigers, we really need a new library, and I'm hoping that's something that we can find a fix for in the very near future.
Well, next time Joe Burrow gives a speech, perhaps he can mention the library at LSU the way he mentioned the food bank in Athens, Ohio.
That's right.
Would you rather have had an inaugural ball on Monday night?
No. And we made the right call. We made the decision many weeks ago not to have a ball because we were very confident that LSU, if they played up to their potential in the SEC championship game and in the Peach Bowl, as it turned out, that we would be in the national championship, and we didn't want to compete against that. And I don't think Donna wanted to go to a ball without me. So we decided not to have one. That was the right call, and of course, euphemistically speaking, at least we did have a ball on Monday night. We had a great one down in New Orleans.
And now there's going to be a parade come Saturday.
Yeah, that's what I understand, and I think they're putting the finishing touches on it right now as far as the planned route and so forth. I think they're looking at the weather and some other things, but I'm excited, and I'm going to encourage people to come out now. Be looking forward. The notice is going to come out. Watch the news, and you'll see what the parade route is going to be and what the location is going to be at the end. And I would hope that everybody comes out to support the LSU Tigers.
I know you and Coach O are close, and back in the day when John McKithen was governor, the governor when you were born, by the way, he used to actively recruit. You could hit the recruiting trail for the Tigers.
I'm not going to hit the recruiting trail for the Tigers, and you know, I'm sure that there are rules now around recruiting that they didn't have then. However, I do what I can to support the program and Coach O specifically. You know, there have been a couple of opportunities for me to talk to some young people that I have a relationship with. You know, Donna taught in the Amite school system, in the Tenchville Parish school system in Amite for a number of years, and there's a tremendous amount of talent there. So we know a lot of those young people, and when it's appropriate and I'm called upon to do so, I'll speak to them.
Hope you're having a splendid week, and it's been a remarkable week for the state of Louisiana, with LSU reigning as the NCAA football champion. Fourth time in modern time this has happened. LSU has had other undefeated seasons: 1958, 11-0, 1908, 10-0, and as we noted a few shows ago, 1905, I believe, 3-0.
It was 3 or 4-0, yeah, with not many games that season.
And the captain was
Frank M. Edwards, my grandfather.
Frank M. Edwards. But there was an inauguration Monday, and before we go to the callers, Governor, there's a little change in leadership in both the House and Senate, and the Speaker of the House, that was viewed as a victory of sorts for you. How do you view Clay Schexnayder getting that position?
Well, look, I'm encouraged about leadership in the House and the Senate. I'm looking forward to working with both of them. And, you know, I will tell you, the majority of the folks, I think it was 60 to 45 was the vote for Speaker and 60 votes for Clay Schexnayder. I think it was a vote to make sure that we work together and move our state forward. Not that the House is going to agree with everything I propose, or that I'll agree with everything that they want to do, but I think we now have a really, really good shot of being able to work together and move the state forward. And working together means sometimes you disagree, but then you still find ways to move the ball down the field and make progress. And I'm encouraged about that, both with respect to the House and to the Senate.
Penny in New Orleans. Hello, Penny. You're our first caller today on Ask the Governor with Governor John Bel Edwards. Hi, Penny.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
Oh, hi. My name's Penny. I'm from New Orleans. I'm a big fan of the governor. Thank you for your service. And I did vote for you. I'm a fan of most of your policies, but I'm concerned about health outcomes, and in particular, I'm concerned about the permitting of the Formosa megaplastic plant in Cancer Alley. And this will negatively affect health outcomes for the citizens living there.
Yeah, well, Penny, first of all, thank you very much for the call. I appreciate the vote as well. And I will tell you that generally speaking, health outcomes in Louisiana are much better, and that's a function of a number of things, including Medicaid expansion, where more people have access to primary care and preventative care. They're also able to fill their prescriptions and so forth. With respect to the Formosa facility, the permit application met all of the legal requirements imposed by both the federal government and the state government. And as a result, the permit was issued. I can tell you we are going to do a study to determine the accuracy, I guess you would say, of the tumor registry that we have that shows the incidences of cancer in what you refer to as Cancer Alley, which, as you know, right now officially don't reflect an increased risk of cancer in that region. But we're going to make sure that we're doing a study so that we can have confidence in that, and that if we shouldn't have confidence, then we won't. I will tell you that I believe we can balance economic development, job creation, and investment on the one hand, with the health that we want for our citizenry on the other, and that's exactly what we're trying to do.
What are your thoughts about Rebecca Gee leaving her position as Secretary of the Department of Health?
Well, first of all, she did a great job over 4 years, and if you look at it, we have the lowest percentage of people uninsured in our state's history today. It's less than half of what it was when I became governor. In fact, it's lower than the national average in terms of the percentage of people without health insurance. We know that we've saved over $300 million. We haven't lost a single hospital, unlike other states, especially across the South, that didn't expand Medicaid. We also know that health outcomes are improving, as I just mentioned, and that things like maternal mortality, there's a 32% reduction in the heavy bleeding that causes so much maternal mortality, and the elimination plan that she came up with for hepatitis C, the first of its kind in the nation, to really lower the cost of prescription drugs, incredibly important. She eliminated a decades-long waiting list for waiver services for those with developmental disabilities. So she did an awful lot of good things to move the needle forward, improving health outcomes, and she let me know by letter a couple of Fridays ago that she was going to be resigning as of the end of this month, and of course we're now engaged in trying to find a successor, someone who will come in and do what I charged Dr. Gee with, and that is improving the health outcomes of the state of Louisiana.
As you know, she generated some opposition for her thoughts, not her actions, to the fact that she has a different opinion on the choice issue than you. In looking at a new person to head that department, will you make that a priority, or does it really matter whether somebody is for abortion rights or not?
Well, I mean, it'll be something that I'll consider as part of the overall record and resume of that particular individual. But as you mentioned, when it comes to that issue, the policy is set by me, not by the secretary. And you know, I think that was borne out over the course of the term. And I don't know of any serious concern that anybody has who happens to be pro-life with my administration. And so it's obviously something that you consider. It's not necessarily determinative if you find the right person who can deliver on everything else. But because I know when it comes to that particular issue, I'll be the one making the calls.
Donald in Baton Rouge. Donald, good afternoon. You're on Ask the Governor with Governor John Bel Edwards.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Governor, and I would like to say congratulations on your second term.
Well, thank you very much, Donald. Appreciate it.
Yes, so Governor, I'm calling you, Governor. I'm calling about my house, Governor. This is the fourth. We're going into the fourth year, and I'm still living with a dorm refrigerator. I'm cooking out of a crock pot. My wife and I, you know, we don't have anything to. I don't know how to put it, Governor. I'm begging you to please help us. We've been to restore, and it's not doing anything, Governor.
Okay, so Donald, I need you to stay on the phone. Don't hang up. Talk to Jace. He'll get some more information because I'm not sure what your particular situation is and what. I'm assuming that since you're calling from New Orleans and that this has something to do with a natural disaster, but I'm not certain. If you'll give the more information to Jace.
It's actually in Baton Rouge.
I'm sorry, you said Baton Rouge. Okay, I'm sorry. I took down the wrong note.
I
I was looking at Penny's name. I'm sorry. So yeah, we will have someone reach out to you from the Restore program, Donald, and just make sure you have your claim number available so that they'll be able to see what assistance you might qualify for and that we can expedite and get it to you.
James in Longview, Texas. Hello, James. You're on with the governor.
Good afternoon, Jim. Good afternoon, Governor.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
I'm doing fine, and this Texan did watch your inauguration, and I was very proud of your speech. I thought you gave a very dignified address, and I really liked how you mentioned the three pivotal words in the state motto: union, justice, and competence, being on the wall of the Capitol. I was seeing it myself, and I applaud that. Anyhow, I just wanted to ask your thoughts on one thing I saw on the news. It's not quite a controversy. That might be too strong a word, but probably a difference of opinion. It was just mentioning, I guess your office and the state treasurer kind of disagreeing on topic of unclaimed property and all that, to where I guess your office would like to liquidate it as soon as possible, not hastily, but in due time, and he would like to protect it, if I understood the article right. And I'm just wondering, do you think you two can reach a happy medium? What I'm getting at, some people might go to a nursing home and be very much alive, but their bank might turn the stuff over to the state as unclaimed when it's very much claimed.
Yeah, James, thank you for calling, and as you usually do, and I appreciate the fact that you watched the inauguration ceremony. The issue I have with the treasurer doesn't have anything to do with whether we're going to protect the unclaimed property program or not. For many years, the legislature has appropriated funding out of the unclaimed property because despite the very best efforts of treasurers, you never return 100% of it. And so there's always money there to be appropriated. And last year they appropriated money that the treasurer has said he is not going to deposit into the treasury. Well, the appropriations bill is a law, it's a statute, and I don't believe he has the discretion not to do what the law tells him to do. And he didn't go to the legislature, either to the Senate Finance Committee when the bill was heard there, or the House Appropriations Committee, and indicate any opposition to the appropriation. And so I believe that we ought to follow the law, and that certainly applies to him. This is no different than it has been in many years, where money has been appropriated out of the unclaimed property fund. So your description about one of us trying to protect it and the other one trying to spend it, I don't agree with that, because there's always going to be a certain amount of the unclaimed property fund that never gets reconnected with the owners, and that's what we're talking about here, and that's what was appropriated, not by me, by the way, but by the legislature. So I'm encouraging the treasurer to honor the appropriation, as I believe it is his legal obligation to do.
Is Treasurer Schroeder taking a harder line on this than his predecessor?
Well, he's taking a different line. Yeah, this is not something that Treasurer Kennedy ever did.
And as we know, he's a pretty good bean counter, or at least he says he is.
Well, yeah, I mean, and this is not something that John Kennedy ever did as treasurer. And certainly if you have opposition to what the legislature has been doing for many, many years, I think you're obligated to go and tell them, rather than allow them to make the appropriation as they have in years past, and then only register your objection after the fact.
How much of this is politics?
100%.
100.
Yes.
That's pretty definitive. Now, Governor, what about John White announcing that he is leaving?
Yeah, he's been here for a good long while. I think it was about
8 years.
Yeah, about 2012 when he came. You know, I think this gives us an opportunity to really look at public education in the state of Louisiana, K through 12, make some decisions about what we want it to look like going forward and how we get there, and then that'll determine who should be the next state superintendent of education. And I know this will be the primary thing that occupies the time and attention and efforts of the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. They'll be making that decision. I understand he will officially submit the resignation tomorrow, maybe effective towards the end of March. So I think that'll be the time period within which the Bessie Board will have to make that transition. And I don't know yet whether they're going to be able to complete the search and hire a new superintendent before then, or whether there will be an interim. But certainly it gives us an opportunity to highlight education and the central role that it has in promoting opportunity and prosperity, and that's something that I take very seriously. And as you know, we're funding education at all levels now better than we have in many, many years.
Are you satisfied that he's leaving? You campaigned the first time saying you wanted him to go.
Oh, no, I did not shed a tear. You know, and I say that we had a respectful working relationship. There were a number of areas where we were in agreement, and we worked together, whether it was on increasing the MFP last year, the teacher pay raise, and so forth. But I've had issues, philosophical issues, basic philosophical issues with him since the beginning, and so I'm one that I'm excited about the opportunity that we have now to replace the superintendent and move education forward in Louisiana. But I do want to thank him for his service, just as I did in my public statement whenever I first learned of his resignation.
How active will you be in selecting his replacement?
Well, as you know, it's a decision for the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. I've got 3 appointees on there. There are a total of 11. And so I'll be talking to them, but I just want a champion for education, that's all.
The President of the United States, who was at the Superdome Monday, he wants the Army players to immediately be able to go to the professional ranks. You and he disagree on that.
Yeah, you know, when you go to West Point, that's really what separates service academies from other institutions of higher education. You make a commitment to serve on active duty following your graduation for a minimum of 5 years. And I wish that there weren't going to be exceptions made for athletes or for anybody else. I think that the commitment ought to be paramount. I mean, that's what, you know, that was the situation when Roger Staubach played, for example, and others. And I just would rather that not change.
Cliff in Metairie. Hi, Cliff. You're on Ask the Governor.
Hi there, Gov. How you doing, Governor?
Hi, Cliff. I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Thanks. I just want to tell you, I'm a lifelong resident here. I've got a college, and I have heard a lot of previous governors. We always talked about education, but when I graduated from college in 1977, I would notice that people who graduated with a degree from Louisiana schools, they spoke in such poor English, like even just double negatives. And you start talking to them and engaging in more and deeper conversations, they couldn't hold a candle to what's going on to other folks. And I know we tried so hard. I'm just commenting basically. And we tried so hard to educate our children, and yet when we give them degrees and I work with people, there's sort of like a disconnect with the type of expectations that we have for what a good, solid college education, the secondary education, not just the primary like a high school graduate.
Well, Cliff, thank you very much for calling. And you know, I think the purpose of the call was to express some concern with the level of education that we're delivering in Louisiana, and the fact that we have persistently for generations had achievement gaps that are troubling. And by the way, I agree with you. And I don't think anyone, you or I or anyone else, should be satisfied, whether it's early childhood, K through 12, or higher education. We have to continue to improve. I believe that we are improving. It's a big priority, not just of mine, but this is a priority that we have across the board, irrespective of party. You know, agreement between me and the legislature, the higher education boards, the business community, and so forth. And we have to do better. And we have a board of regents, for example, that has developed a higher education master plan that is aggressive, that calls for 60% of all of our working age adults by 2030 to have a quality post-secondary credential or degree. That will be a huge improvement from where we are today to making our citizenry workforce ready. It will draw investment and create more opportunities here in Louisiana. But this is something that is critically important, and I agree with you, which is, by the way, the reason I ran for governor. The number one reason I ran for governor the first time was because we had disinvested in higher education more than any other state in the nation over the previous 8 years, and we increased tuition more than any other state in the nation over that same period of time. And I thought that was a awful path to be on, and it didn't. It wasn't something that I thought that would lead us to the future that we all want. So we're going to continue to make progress and put a lot of emphasis on this, not just with the funding, but with policy, making sure that more people have opportunity for success, and that they can then live that success here in Louisiana. That's critically important as well.
Is it paramount for the state to grow in population? We are growing, we're just not growing as fast as the rest of the country or the region, and this is a long-standing issue.
It is. It's something that's been going on for a long time, and yeah, it is. And we really want to make sure that Louisiana natives stay here, and that we attract other people from around the country here so that they can contribute. And I think the way that you do that is you do improve education. you do improve your health care. You grow your economy. You create investment here in Louisiana. And by the way, we're doing those things. And so if you came up with a master plan to combat the static population figures that we've seen, it would look a lot like what we're doing in Louisiana, and I believe that we are going to be successful, and we still have a ways to go in that regard, however.
How much of our future is related to the coastal issues we have? If we don't have land, we can't have people.
Well, it's extremely important, and it was a big part of my speech on Monday at the inauguration dealt with this. So 2.5 million people live and work along the coast in Louisiana. It is one of the treasures for the entire country.
More than half the state.
When you look at shipping, when you look at mineral exploration and production, when you look at fisheries, recreation, all of those things, it's critically important to us. And we have the most challenged ecosystem along the coast in the country, and one of the most challenged in the world. And so our ability to better manage water, to restore coast, to afford hurricane protection to people who live and work along the coast, incredibly important. The good news is we're making progress. We have more projects under construction and under design right now than any point in our history. And we literally expect to break ground on enough projects, major projects over the next 4 years, that when those projects are delivered, we will be creating more land than we're losing for the first time in a very, very long time here in Louisiana.
Dwight in Washington Parish. Hello, Dwight. You're on with Governor John Bel Edwards.
Hello, Governor. How are you?
Dwight, I'm doing fine, thank you.
All right. Well, I have to say congratulations, and I was sweating it out on your night to be elected. I was really sweating it out. I'm glad you made it. It's obvious that you care about the entire state and not just one main area. So we're really pleased that you made it.
Thank you, Dwight.
And yes, sir. And I'm calling from Washington Parish. You have a lot of friends here, and it's in. You have a good friend in Rockville. So I'm in Isabel, and so I'm calling about a gravel road that connects Washington and St. Tammany Parish. And so, but the problem is, well, a lot of people use it, mostly Washington Parish people. So politically, the parish president of St. Tammany, Pat, she said she wasn't gonna pave it.
All right. And by the way, she's now
Yes,
defeated, right?
she is, and there is a new parish president in St. Tammany. Dwight, don't hang up. I don't think you're talking about a state road. I think you're going to be talking about local road that within Washington Parish is owned and maintained by Washington Parish, and then across the line owned and maintained by St. Tammany. But I need to get that road designation from you just so I can be sure. We don't have many gravel state highways anymore, although that was not uncommon when I was younger. But give that information to Jace. We will get someone from the Department of Transportation Development to give you a call. And I will soon be speaking with the parish president of St. Tammany, and I will relay your concern as well. Thank you, Dwight.
We congratulate Mike Cooper, who's
Right,
the
correct.
new president. And speaking of Coopers, you've got a gentleman named Mark Cooper who works for you, big aide in the governor's office, and Jay Darden, both of whom are Republicans.
Yeah, and we've got other Republicans as well. So Mark Cooper is my chief of staff. He comes from Bossier Parish, and of course Jay Darden, the longtime public servant who was on the city council here in Baton Rouge, was a state senator, secretary of state, and then lieutenant governor. And now, for the last 4 years, has done a tremendous job as the Commissioner of Administration, working with the budget and interacting with state agencies and with the legislature and so forth. But they both do a tremendous job.
Richard in Baton Rouge. Hello, Richard. You're on with the governor. Please be brief.
Yes, Governor, thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, Richard.
I wanted to ask if you have any kind of discretionary budget to do something about the eyesore lake right in front of your house.
But thank you, Richard. I'll get to that on the other side of the
Okay,
break.
we'll talk about Capitol Lake. And we're getting local, but that's good. That's why the governor's here, and he's at your service for another quarter hour. It was very nice of Governor Jindal and several other Republicans to be on hand for your second oath of office, something that governors don't have to do, but he showed up.
No, I was very happy that Governor Edwards and Governor Jindal both came to the inauguration. And of course, we had extended the invitations to Governors Romer and Foster as well. They were unable to attend, but it's great to have them there. And I want to get back to Richard. So, you know, much of North Baton Rouge actually drains, in terms of drainage, into a pond that's across Capitol Access Road from the governor's mansion. And so if you have trash and things that are in the street or in the ditches around Baton Rouge or along the interstate, a lot of that makes its way into that pond. It's a retention pond that then communicates with Capitol Lake, and when that gets too high, it gets pumped into the river. So we do have, and I agree with Richard, we have too much litter in the retention pond and in Capitol Lake as a result of all of that. And we're asking DEQ, DOTD, and Wildlife and Fisheries, by the way, and Baton Rouge, to figure out what we can do about that, because it really is, it's an eyesore at times, and sometimes it's much worse than at other times, but it is an eyesore, and I think Richard is exactly right.
Doug in Baton Rouge. Hello, Doug. You're on the air with the governor.
Good afternoon, and congratulations again.
Thank you,
I wanted
Doug.
to follow up on what you were saying about the coast. You know, the coastal issue, really, a lot of it involves the Mississippi River, and you mentioned some other problems we're having with the river, like high water, and there's also harmful algal blooms and hypoxia. And I'm just encouraging you to work with the states upstream from us. We have a framework to do that, and a lot of these problems we're going to need their help to solve. So I know you're looking at that, and just encouraging you to work with all of those other states.
Well, thank you, Doug, and we do that. You know, we have an organization of states that border the Mississippi River where we can do that on a formal basis, but we also have the Water Institute of the Gulf, which is an entity that belongs to the state that's actually on a new campus right there on the Mississippi River in Baton Rouge, and it has a world-class model of the lower Mississippi River. It informs much of what we do. But that river is so incredibly important to this country and to our state, and reconnecting the sediment that comes down the river with the coast is the key to growing our coast again and creating the marshland that we need to serve as a storm barrier. And as you mentioned, we have other issues, so that the Midwestern states, you know, because almost 2/3 of the country drains into the Mississippi River, but the Midwestern states have an awful lot of fertilizer that they use for agricultural purposes that end up in the Mississippi River and depletes the water of oxygen, and that goes out into the Gulf. And so we've got a lot of work that we have to do, that is for sure, and we are mindful of it.
Henry in New Orleans. Henry, good morning or good afternoon. You're on Ask the Governor. Hi, Henry.
Hello. Yes, congratulations, Governor.
Thank you, Henry.
I was concerned with observing so many areas selling tobacco, and it's just been to my attention that some retailers, they keep the products on display as well as a variety of packs. And they have this vaping smoking coming out. You know, people are not purchasing cigarettes as they used to, but some elements in their environment is not controlled to the tobacco, but they don't put a date on the tobacco product.
Well, Henry, thank you very much for the call, and I think you're going to be seeing some changes pretty soon about tobacco and vaping products because the Congress passed an instrument that was signed by the president recently that raises the age to 21 for tobacco products and vaping, and I think by executive order the president banned some of the flavorings that are being used for vaping products. And that takes some period of time for them to come up with all the rules and get it to the state so that we can start enforcing it. And quite honestly, in Louisiana, we have a state law that is in conflict with that. And this will be revisited by the legislature again this year, I'm sure, because right now our state law and federal law are different with respect to the age that you have to be in order to buy these products. But typically the federal government will condition continued receipt on certain federal funds on aligning state law with federal law. So I would anticipate that that's going to happen this fall. And once you see, I'm sorry, in this session that's going to happen this spring. And then I think when that happens, you're going to see some changes that from your perspective at least will be positive.
Kim, in Centerville, Mississippi, the birthplace of junior U.S. Senator John Neely Kennedy. Kim, you're on with Governor John Bel Edwards.
Actually, it's Centerville, Louisiana.
All right, well then I apologize. There are
That's
two.
no problem.
I'm more familiar with the other, but go ahead.
I don't have a question, only a comment for Governor Edwards. I want to thank you for your service and thank you for being such a gentleman in office. Have a great day, sir.
Kim, thank you very much. And that gives me an opportunity to wish Jim Inkster a happy birthday.
Oh,
you know, today is the 46th show we've done. Is it your 46th birthday as well, Jim?
I wish it were, but I'm about 8.5 years ahead of you, so you know how old I am.
Yeah, well, I do now.
But the governor of Louisiana, Earl Long was governor when I was born, and John J. McKiffin was governor. Did you ever meet him, by the way?
One time, and I just happened to stop at his law office in Baton Rouge. This was many, many years ago, and I don't know what brought me there, but I stopped in. I think I was riding through town with my dad for something, and I just happened to bump into him by accident. He was still practicing law.
He was quite a man, and the Superdome, of course, largely was his baby, along with that of Dave Dixon. But people forget he left office in May of 1972, so that's 3.5 years before it opened. And the man who was there for the opening on August 3rd, 1975, was there Monday night. He also was at your inaugural. Quite a schedule for a 92-year-old man.
It was, and Governor Edwards has been blessed with good health, and he's very, very active. And I will tell you, I remember when I met John McKiffin, it was immediately obvious why they called him Big John. He was a big man.
And he fought in World War II with great heroism. And I know you like people who served in the military, and you have that West Point pedigree, and many people believe that you might be a national figure at some point. You've still got 4 more years as governor, but is that ever something you think about?
You know, I don't think about it unless somebody asks me about it. It's not something I sit around and ponder. It's not anything that I'm planning on or have any intention of doing. I am quite literally focused on serving out these 4 years as governor, doing everything I can every day to move our state forward. As I mentioned, we've been incredibly blessed, but we do have more than our fair share of challenges as well. And so there's enough work to do right here to keep me fully busy. That's all that I'm thinking about, and you know, I'm one of those people that I never say never, but I will be very, very surprised if anything like that is in my future.
What do you think the future of the Democratic Party is in this state?
Well, you know, that's difficult to say. Obviously, you know, I think the parties are changing on both sides at the national level. You know, whether you look at the Democratic Party or the Republican Party and what it stands for, what they stand for today, you know, and then compare and contrast that with what the situation was just a few years ago. Mm-hmm. Very much in flux. That's why, you know, I try to make sure that I take a position on issues where I am comfortable, and as you know, on a few occasions and on a few issues, that puts me out of step with my national party. But I think it's very consistent with what the vast majority of people in Louisiana believe, and with respect to those issues. So I don't know. It's really hard to say. But anybody who thinks they know what the future holds in politics, they are kidding themselves, because they're wrong much more often than they're right.
Will you go to the Democratic Convention in Milwaukee?
You know, I don't know. I haven't even thought about it. You know, I guess it's possible. I think it'll depend on what plays out between now and then, and how nomination process goes.
And there is an election for U.S. Senator. Bill Cassidy is running. Right now, the Democrats don't have a well-financed challenger. There are some people who are running, but they're not well-known and not well-financed.
Yeah, my goal is to make sure that I have a good working relationship with Senator Cassidy, because there's so many things that we need to do together. You know, I'll be calling on him soon in Washington to try to get some assistance as it relates to the state payments on our share of the hurricane risk reduction system, for example, that the Corps of Engineers built in New Orleans, that has had tremendous cost overruns and was delivered much later, and we have interest that is accumulating and so forth, that we're going to need assistance from getting more revenue sharing out of the Go Mesa. He said that's incredibly important. That's something I'm working with him on as well. So as I mentioned during our campaign, there's a time for politics and there's a time for governing. It's time to govern right now.